The Harrington mansion stood tall and proud, but inside it was a place of silence. The grand hallways were wide, the walls decorated with paintings of serious men, and the furniture polished until it shone like glass. Yet for all its beauty, the house felt cold, almost lifeless, as if joy had long ago walked out the door. In one of those quiet rooms lived Adrian, the only heir of Lord Harrington. Adrian was a boy of 12 with soft brown hair and pale eyes that never saw light. He had been blind since birth, and though his father gave him everything money could buy, fine clothes, good food, private tutors, Adrian always felt something was missing. He could not explain what it was, but deep inside, he longed for warmth, for color, for something that made him feel alive. Most days, Adrian would sit near the tall window in the drawing room, listening to the wind as it moved through the trees outside. Sometimes he would run his hands along the piano that stood in the corner, its keys cool and smooth under his fingers. He had never played it, but he loved the way it felt, as if the instrument was waiting for him to unlock its secrets. His mother had once played before she passed away, but since then the piano had remained silent, gathering dust like an abandoned memory. The one person who noticed Adrian's quiet fascination was Clara, a maid who worked in the mansion. Clara was young, perhaps no more than 18, with gentle eyes and quick hands. She was not born into wealth. Her family had been poor, and working here was her only way to help them survive. Clara did her duties without complaint, yet her heart was soft and she often found herself drawn to Adrian. While others treated him as fragile or strange, Clara saw a boy who was lonely, a boy searching for something beyond the walls that trapped him. One evening, as she dusted the drawing room, Clara saw Adrian sitting by the piano again. His small hands pressed a few keys, one after another, but the notes were random, broken, almost like questions with no answers. He tilted his head as if listening for something in the sound. "Do you like the piano, Master Adrian?" she asked softly. Adrian turned his face toward her voice.
"It feels alive when I touch it," he said.
"Like it wants to speak, but I don't know how to listen." Clara's chest tightened. She remembered the days when she herself had played, back when her father could still afford lessons. Music had been her secret joy, but when hard times came, she had left her dreams behind. Now hearing Adrian's words, it was as if a spark lit inside her. "Perhaps," she whispered, "it only needs a friend to help it find its voice." Adrian smiled, his blind eyes shining with curiosity. "And do you know how to be that friend?" Her heart pounded. She was only a maid. Teaching him would be dangerous if the Lord found out. His rules were strict and servants had no right to meddle in the affairs of the heir. But in that moment, looking at Adrian's eager face, Clara could not bring herself to refuse. "Maybe I do," she admitted quietly. From that day, a secret bond began. Clara would finish her chores quickly, and when the house grew silent at night, she would slip into the drawing room. There, by the soft glow of the lamp, she would guide Adrian's hands across the keys. At first, his fingers stumbled, pressing the wrong notes, but Clara was patient. She counted the rhythm out loud, humming the melody so he could feel it, not just hear it. Adrian listened carefully. Music to him was not only sound, it was texture, shape, and light all at once. Each note painted colors in his mind, colors he had never seen with his eyes. A low note was like the deep blue of the ocean he had only heard about. A high note was like the golden warmth of the sun he could only feel. The piano became his window into a world no one else could imagine. Clara watched in wonder as Adrian grew braver. His laughter, rare and bright, filled the room when he finally managed to play a small tune without her help. For the first time in years, she saw happiness on his face, and it gave her courage. But there was always the fear. If Lord Harrington discovered what they were doing, Clara would surely be dismissed, maybe even thrown onto the street with nothing. Yet when Adrian begged for another lesson, she could not say no. His joy was too precious, too rare in that lonely mansion, so the lessons continued in secret. The mansion, once silent, began to hold whispers of hidden melodies at night, notes that carried hope, friendship, and something dangerous, the risk of being found. And though neither Adrian nor Clara knew it yet, these secret lessons would not remain hidden forever. The nights in the Harrington mansion grew darker and quieter, yet in that silence something new was beginning. Clara the maid waited until all her work was finished and the other servants had gone to rest. The grand corridors felt endless, and her footsteps on the marble floor seemed too loud. She carried only a small oil lamp, its flame trembling with every breath of wind that slipped through the cracks of the old windows. Her heart raced as she pushed open the heavy door of the drawing room. Inside, the piano stood in its corner, waiting like a secret friend. Adrian was already there, sitting on the bench with his hands resting on the keys. He turned his head as soon as he heard her enter. His pale eyes, though blind, seemed to light up at the sound of her arrival. "You came," he said in a whisper. Clara smiled nervously. "Of course, Master Adrian. I promised," he shook his head gently. "Don't call me that when we're here. Just Adrian." That simple request made Clara's chest tighten. In a house where everyone bowed, followed rules, and never spoke to him as a normal boy, Adrian just wanted to be treated like a friend. She nodded. "All right. Just Adrian." She set the lamp on the piano, and the golden light fell across the polished keys. Clara sat beside him, her hands brushing softly against his as she placed his fingers in position. "These are the notes," she explained. "Each one is like a voice. When they join together, they tell a story." Adrian pressed a key. A single sound filled the room. He smiled. "It feels like the start of something." "Try the one next to it," Clara urged, another note. "This one higher, brighter." Adrian tilted his head. "Like the first one was heavy, and this one is lighter." Clara's eyes widened. He understood in his own way. For Adrian, who had never seen colors or paintings, every sound became something more. Weight, brightness, warmth. She realized then that teaching him would not be like teaching anyone else. He did not need sheet music. He needed to feel. "Listen," she said softly. She played 3 simple notes, slowly, carefully. Then she took his hand and guided his fingers to copy her. He pressed the keys one by one, clumsy but determined. When the sound came out right, he laughed. A sound so pure it echoed through the cold mansion like sunlight breaking into shadow. Again and again they tried. Clara hummed melodies and Adrian followed by touch. Sometimes his fingers stumbled and he frowned in frustration. "It's no good," he muttered. "I can't see." "I'll never play like you." Clara shook her head quickly. "You don't need eyes for music. Music is not about sight, it's about heart. And you, Adrian, you already hear more than anyone else." Her words touched him deeply. No one had ever spoken to him like that. His father only told him what he could not do, what he would never be, but Clara believed he could. He pressed the keys again, and this time the sound was steady. Hours passed like minutes. The mansion outside remained silent, unaware of the small miracle blooming within. Adrian discovered patterns. Low notes that felt like thunder, high notes like bird songs, and chords that felt like whole worlds opening before him. He asked Clara questions non-stop, his curiosity endless, and she answered each one with patience. "Why does this one sound sad?" "Because it is a minor note," she explained. "It bends the story, makes it ache. And this one? That one is strong, like a hero returning home." Every answer painted a picture in his mind. To him, music became a secret language he could finally understand, a language that did not care he was blind. But with every lesson, Clara's fear grew. What if Lord Harrington found out? He despised weakness, and in his eyes, music was weakness. If he discovered his son playing, and worse, that a maid had been teaching him, his anger would be unstoppable. Clara could lose her position, her home, her only means of supporting her family. Yet when she looked at Adrian's face, glowing with joy, she knew she could not stop. His happiness was worth the risk. For so long, the boy had lived in silence, surrounded by rules and shadows. Now at last, he had something that made him feel alive. One night, as they finished a lesson, Adrian turned to her and whispered, "Clara, when I play, I see things, not with my eyes, but here." He placed his hand over his heart. "It feels like colors I've never known, places I've never been. Do you think one day I could play for others? Make them see what I see?" Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to say yes, but fear held her back. She forced a smile. "One day, Adrian, but for now, let it be our secret." "Our secret," he repeated with a grin. And so their hidden world continued, night after night. Each lesson was a stolen treasure, each note a step into a brighter world that belonged only to them. Neither of them could know that their secret songs would soon grow too powerful to stay hidden, and that the walls of the mansion, cold and unyielding, would not protect them forever. The days inside the Harrington mansion passed slowly, always quiet, always proper. Servants moved like shadows, careful never to disturb the heavy silence. But behind that silence, in the corner of the drawing room, something beautiful was growing. Every night, when the house fell asleep, Clara and Adrian met at the piano. Adrian's hands had grown steadier on the keys. At first he struck the wrong notes often, but now he could play small melodies without Clara guiding him. The music was not perfect, but to him it was magic. Every tune filled his blind world with pictures and feelings. When he played a happy melody, he imagined sunlight breaking through clouds. When the notes turned sad, he felt as though the air around him was gray and heavy. Music had become his way of seeing the world. Clara, too, changed during those nights. She had entered the mansion only as a maid, silent and invisible. But now in Adrian's company, she felt like more. She was not just cleaning floors and carrying trays. She was shaping his heart, opening his world. Whenever Adrian laughed after mastering a new tune, Clara felt warmth inside her chest, a warmth she had not known in years. Their bond grew deeper. Adrian began to tell her things he had never spoken to anyone else. He told her about the loneliness of being the heir to a powerful man who never looked at him with love. He told her how the other tutors treated him like a task, not like a boy. Clara listened quietly, never judging, never hurrying him. Sometimes she shared her own past, the little village where she had grown up. The nights when her father had played a violin for her before hard times took everything away. "You know," Adrian said one evening, his fingers gently pressing the keys, "I think music is the only thing that makes me forget I'm blind. It feels like the world opens just for me." Clara's eyes stung with tears, but she smiled. "Then we will keep opening it note by note." Their secret became something they both lived for. During the day, Clara moved through her chores quickly, always waiting for the evening to arrive. Adrian, trapped with tutors teaching him numbers and manners, spent the hours counting down until he could sit at the piano again. The drawing room, once lifeless, now held the sound of laughter and hidden songs. But secrets never stay hidden forever. The other servants had begun to notice. Clara spent more time in the drawing room than was required. Sometimes they heard faint notes of music at odd hours and whispers started to spread. A few maids teased her quietly, asking if she thought she was a governess now instead of a servant. Clara brushed off their words, but inside worry began to grow. If anyone told Lord Harrington, it would not just be her position at risk. It could mean ruin for her family back home. Still, she could not stop. Adrian's joy was too precious. One night, as Adrian practiced a soft lullaby Clara had taught him, he suddenly paused. "Clara," he whispered, "do you ever feel like we're doing something wrong?" She hesitated, her heart beating fast. "Why do you ask?" "Because Father doesn't want me near the piano. He never says why, but I know he hates it. If he finds out, he will be angry. At you, at me." Clara touched his hand gently, steadying it. "Sometimes, Adrian, the right things are the ones we must keep safe, even if others don't understand. Music makes you happy, doesn't it?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "More than anything. Then it cannot be wrong." He smiled faintly, reassured by her words. "Then promise me you'll never stop teaching me." Clara swallowed her fear and nodded. "I promise." The promise bound them even more. Their nights grew braver. Adrian began to create his own small tunes, short pieces that were clumsy but full of heart. Clara clapped quietly each time, and he laughed like a child discovering treasure. She knew that one day he would be able to play beautifully, perhaps even better than anyone she had ever heard. But with every passing night, the risk pressed closer. The walls of the mansion seemed to listen. Footsteps echoed in the hallways more sharply, as if warning them. And in the eyes of the older servants, Clara sometimes saw suspicion, the kind that could lead to betrayal. Yet when Adrian's fingers danced over the keys and he whispered, "Clara, do you hear?" This is the sound of light. She forgot her fear. For in those stolen hours, it was not a mansion of silence they lived in. It was a world of music, laughter and friendship. And though they did not know it yet, the music they created together would soon bring both joy and danger, pulling their lives into a storm neither of them could escape. The mansion seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. Adrian and Clara still met at the piano at night, still created their small world of music, but the danger now followed them like a shadow. Clara often looked over her shoulder when she carried her lamp down the hall. The whispers among the servants had grown louder. Some of them had started to question why she spent so much time with the blind heir. Others only smirked when she passed, as if they knew something she did not. Adrian noticed her unease. One night, as she placed his hands on the keys, he asked softly, Clara, are you afraid? She hesitated, then smiled weakly. Only a little. A father? He asked. Yes, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. He doesn't like music. If he finds out, he will be angry. Adrian frowned. But music makes me happy. Why would he be angry about that? Clara did not know how to explain it. Lord Harrington was a man of rules and power, a man who thought strength came only from money, control, and hard lessons. To him, music was a waste of time, a soft weakness that would ruin his heir. Clara could not bring herself to tell Adrian the full truth, so she only said, "Some people don't understand music the way you do." Adrian pressed a low key, listening to its heavy sound. Then maybe they don't understand me either. Her heart broke at his words. She squeezed his hand and whispered, "Then let us keep our secret safe, Adrian, for as long as we can. But secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, have a way of escaping." One evening, Clara had just finished helping Adrian with a gentle tune when the sound of footsteps echoed suddenly in the hall. Heavy, sharp, and quick, they both froze. Clara's face turned pale. "Father," Adrian whispered, his ears sharper than hers. Clara blew out the lamp in a rush, plunging the room into darkness. The door creaked open, and the tall figure of Lord Harrington filled the doorway. Even in the faint glow of the hallway torches, his presence was like a storm entering the room. "What are you doing here?" His voice was deep and cold. Adrian's hands were still resting on the piano. Clara, hidden by the shadow, pressed herself against the side of the instrument, her heart thundering so loudly she thought it would give her away. Adrian turned his head toward the voice, calm but nervous. I was touching the piano, Father." Lord Harrington's boots clicked against the floor as he stepped closer. He studied his son for a long moment, then looked at the instrument. His jaw tightened. "The piano is not for you, Adrian," he said firmly. "It is an old memory, one that should stay silent." Adrian swallowed hard. "But Father, I like how it feels. The notes are like colors in my mind." "Enough," Lord Harrington snapped, though his tone carried a trace of something softer beneath the anger. Pain, perhaps. "You're not here to play like a child. You are my heir. You must learn discipline, not waste your time pressing keys." Adrian lowered his head, hiding his trembling lips. Clara, still hidden in the shadows, bit her tongue to stop herself from speaking. She wanted to defend Adrian, to tell Lord Harrington that music was not weakness, but she dared not move. Finally, Lord Harrington let out a slow breath. "Come, it is late. Return to your room." Adrian stood slowly, his fingers brushing the piano one last time before stepping away. His father turned and walked out, his footsteps fading into the hall. Adrian followed, his head lowered. When the door closed and the room was empty again, Clara sagged against the piano, her knees weak. Her hands trembled as she relit the lamp. They had been so close, too close. One wrong move and the secret would have been exposed. The next day, Clara noticed how the other servants stared at her. One of them, an older maid, whispered, "Careful, girl. The master is watching. If he catches you meddling with the boy, you'll be out on the street." Clara forced a smile, but fear gripped her heart. That night, when Adrian asked her to return for another lesson, she almost said no. She almost told him it was too dangerous. But when she saw the hope in his pale eyes, she could not deny him. So the lessons continued, but now with more caution. Clara kept the lamp dimmer, and Adrian played more softly, listening for the slightest noise in the hall. Every sound, every creak of wood or brush of footsteps made their hearts race. Yet the fear only made their bond stronger. Each secret lesson became more precious, like stolen pieces of happiness in a world that tried to deny them joy. Adrian began to memorize longer melodies, his hands learning the path of the keys by heart. Clara praised him softly, and he laughed with quiet pride. But deep inside, both of them knew that Lord Harrington's suspicion had been awakened. He had seen his son at the piano, and though he had let it go that night, it was clear he would not ignore it forever. The risk was no longer just shadows and whispers. It was real, standing at their door waiting to strike. And when it came, it would change everything. The mansion buzzed with life in a way it rarely did. Servants hurried through the halls carrying trays of food, polishing silver and setting up the grand dining room. That evening, Lord Harrington was hosting an important gathering. Wealthy families from the city were arriving, men in fine suits, women in silk gowns, their voices filling the quiet house with laughter and conversation. Adrian sat quietly in his chair near the drawing room, listening to the noise with mixed feelings. He could not see the guests, but he could hear every detail, the clink of glasses, the rustle of fabric, the proud tone in his father's voice as he greeted people. Adrian often felt invisible at these events. To most, he was simply the blind heir, a boy to be pitied or ignored. Clara passed by carrying a tray of glasses. She paused when she saw him. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. Adrian tilted his head. "Everyone is happy tonight, but I feel like I don't belong here." "You belong more than anyone," Clara whispered. "You are the master's son." He gave a small, sad smile. "The son who cannot see. The son who cannot be what father wants." Clara wanted to comfort him, but there was no time. Guests were everywhere, and she could not linger. She squeezed his shoulder quickly and hurried on. But her words stayed with him. As the night went on, Adrian remained by the piano, running his fingers across the keys when no one was looking. The music inside him was restless, waiting to escape. Clara's secret lessons had filled him with courage, and tonight, surrounded by people who never saw him as anything but weak, he wanted to show them he was more. When the dining hall doors opened and the guests spilled into the drawing room, Adrian heard the shuffle of many feet. Laughter and chatter swirled around him. Lord Harrington stood proudly at the center, speaking with a group of men about business matters. No one noticed Adrian sitting at the piano until he pulled out the bench and placed both hands on the keys. The first note rang out, clear and strong. The room fell silent, heads turned. Conversation stopped. Adrian pressed another key, then another, slowly forming the melody Clara had taught him so many nights ago. His fingers trembled at first, his heart pounding in his chest, but soon the rhythm steadied. The music flowed through him, each note painting a picture of courage, of light, of hope. Clara, standing by the far wall with a tray in her hands, nearly dropped it. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to run to him to stop him before Lord Harrington saw, but it was too late. The entire room was listening. The guests stared in shock. They had never seen the boy do more than sit quietly, never heard him speak more than a few polite words. Now here he was, playing with feeling as though the piano had been waiting for him all along. Some of the women even pressed handkerchiefs to their lips, moved by the beauty of the sound. Adrian's blind eyes shone with joy. For once, people were not looking at him with pity. They were listening, truly listening. But Lord Harrington's face was hard. His jaw clenched, his fists tight at his sides. To him, this was no miracle. It was rebellion. When the final note faded, the room erupted in applause. Guests clapped and cheered, praising Adrian, calling him talented, calling him gifted. Adrian smiled shyly, bowing his head. For the first time in his life, he felt proud. Then his father's voice cut through the praise, cold, sharp. "Enough." The applause died instantly. The room fell into silence once more. Lord Harrington stepped forward, his eyes fixed on his son. "Who taught you this?" he demanded. Adrian froze. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He could not betray Clara. He could not. Lord Harrington's gaze swept the room, sharp and accusing. The servants shifted nervously, and Clara's heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She stared at the floor, praying he would not notice her, praying Adrian would not speak her name. But she knew the danger had grown too great. The secret they had protected for so long was standing in the open now, glowing like fire in the center of the room. Adrian swallowed hard, his voice trembling but steady with resolve. "I learned because I wanted to. Music makes me alive. Is that so wrong, Father?" The guests murmured quietly. Some looked at Lord Harrington with disapproval, others with curiosity. But the Lord's face was unreadable, his eyes dark as stone. Clara could not move. She stood frozen, the tray shaking in her hands. She knew the truth would soon be revealed, and when it was, her life in the Harrington mansion would be over. And yet, even in her fear, she felt a strange pride. Adrian had dared to stand in front of them all and share his gift. Whatever happened next, he had already proven something important, that he was more than his blindness, more than his father's rules. He was a soul full of music, and no one could silence that forever. The guests had left. The grand rooms of the mansion were quiet again. No more laughter, no more music. Only heavy silence remained in the air, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Clara stood alone in the servants' corridor, her back pressed against the wall. Her hands were cold, her thoughts spinning. She had seen it. Adrian playing the piano in front of everyone, smiling with pride, full of life. And then she had seen Lord Harrington's face. No joy, no surprise, only anger. She knew what would happen next. A knock came at the door, sharp and sudden. One of the housemaids peeked in. "Clara," she whispered, "the master wants to see you now." Clara's breath caught. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to walk, step by step, past the grand paintings and golden lamps until she stood before the large double doors of Lord Harrington's study. She knocked once, then entered. The room was dark, lit by only a single lamp on the desk. Lord Harrington sat in his chair, tall and still, his eyes fixed on the fire burning in the fireplace. He didn't look at her. "Close the door," he said. She obeyed. The click of the door behind her sounded like a lock snapping shut. "Do you know why you're here?" His voice was calm but cold. Clara stood straight. "Yes, sir." He turned slowly to face her. His eyes were sharp, filled with quiet fury. "You were the one who taught him, weren't you?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. Lying would be useless now. The truth was already out. "I asked you a question," he said more firmly. "Yes," she whispered. "I taught him." He stood up slowly, walked toward her. "You, a servant, disobeyed my rules. You crossed the line. Do you understand what that means?" Clara nodded, her heart pounding. "I do, but I had to, sir." He needed it. "Needed it?" he snapped. "What he needs is discipline. Not music, not foolish dreams. He is blind. He must learn to be strong. What use is a piano to a boy who cannot see?" Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "He may not see with his eyes, sir, but he feels the music. It makes him happy. It makes him alive." Lord Harrington stared at her, silent. The firelight flickered across his face. For a moment, Clara thought she saw something, pain, maybe even sorrow. But it vanished quickly. "I trusted you to do your job. Nothing more," he said. "And now you've filled my son's head with nonsense. You've made him soft." "No, sir," Clara said, her voice stronger now. "He's not soft. He's brave. It takes courage to play in front of people, knowing they might laugh or judge him. It takes courage to believe in something when the world tells you not to." Her words hung in the air. Lord Harrington looked away. He walked back to his desk, hands behind his back. "You will leave this house tomorrow," he said. "Pack your things. Your service here is finished." Clara's chest tightened, but she stood tall. "May I say goodbye to Adrian?" "No," he replied without turning around. "You've already done enough." She wanted to scream, to beg, but she knew it would change nothing. She turned and walked out, her vision blurry with tears. The hallway felt longer than ever before. That night, Adrian waited at the piano, fingers ready, heart full of hope. But Clara didn't come. He waited for hours, listening for her soft footsteps, her gentle voice. Nothing. The next morning, a different maid came to assist him. She was kind but quiet. Adrian asked, "Where is Clara?" The maid hesitated. "She's gone." Adrian felt like the air had left the room. "Gone? Why? Where?" The maid didn't answer. She didn't need to. Adrian already knew. He pushed away from the piano. It felt cold now, silent. His hands rested on the keys, but he didn't play. His heart ached. Not just from losing Clara, but from knowing his father had taken her away. That afternoon, Adrian went to his father's study. He stood at the doorway, his small frame straight and determined. "You sent her away," he said. "Didn't you?" Lord Harrington looked up from his papers. "Yes, I did what was necessary." "She made me happy," Adrian said. "She made me feel like I wasn't broken." "You are not broken," his father replied quickly. "But you are blind, and you must learn to live with that. Music will not help you survive in this world." Adrian shook his head. "You don't understand. You never tried to. You only see what I cannot do. But Clara saw what I could." Lord Harrington's face was unreadable. "Go to your room." Adrian didn't move. "I won't stop playing. You can take her away, but I'll keep playing, because it's mine now. She gave it to me." And with that, he turned and walked out, leaving his father in silence. Lord Harrington sat there still and quiet, listening to the sound of his son's cane tapping down the hallway. And deep inside, something shifted, not enough to show, not yet, but something had changed. The mansion felt colder after Clara left. Adrian no longer smiled. He did not speak much during his lessons or meals. The piano still stood in the corner of the drawing room, but it stayed silent. He sat near it sometimes, placing his fingers on the keys, but he did not play. Without Clara, the music felt empty. Days passed like this. The servants noticed the change. Even Lord Harrington noticed it, though he didn't say anything. Adrian had always been quiet, but now he seemed smaller, like a candle that had lost its flame. Then one morning, something inside Adrian changed. He woke up earlier than anyone else. He got dressed without help. His hands trembled a little, but he did it. He told the maid he didn't need breakfast. He just asked, "Will there be guests today?" The maid nodded. "Yes, your father is meeting some important people." Adrian said nothing. He simply turned and walked toward the drawing room. He felt the furniture with his hands, counted his steps. He knew this room better than anyone. This was where the music had lived. This was where Clara had guided his fingers. He sat at the piano. His hands hovered over the keys. His heart pounded. He remembered Clara's voice, soft, kind, always patient. "Don't be afraid. Let the music speak." And then, with a deep breath, he began to play. The first note was quiet. Then the second. Slowly, the melody came to life. It was one of the first songs Clara had taught him. Simple, gentle, full of emotion. As he played, the servants stopped in the halls. One by one, they turned toward the sound. It had been days since anyone had heard music in the mansion. Now it was back, more powerful than before. Lord Harrington was in the meeting room with his guests when he heard it too. The notes floated down the hallway like soft wind. Everyone paused. "Is that the piano?" one of the guests asked. Lord Harrington stood up without answering. He knew that melody.
He had heard it before, long ago.
His late wife used to play it. Without a word, he left the meeting room and walked toward the sound. The guests followed, curious. When he reached the drawing room, he saw Adrian sitting at the piano, his blind eyes closed, his face calm but full of feeling. His small fingers moved over the keys with confidence. Everyone stood in silence, watching. The music filled every corner of the room. It was not perfect. Adrian missed a few notes, but no one cared. The feeling in the music was real. It told a story of sadness, of courage, of love, a story of a boy who had once lived in shadows but had now found his own light. When the song ended, Adrian placed his hands in his lap and faced the room. He couldn't see them, but he knew they were there. "I played this for someone I care about," he said softly. "She's gone now, but she gave me this music, and I'll never let it go." The guests were quiet. Some had tears in their eyes. Lord Harrington stepped forward. "Adrian," he said. Adrian turned his head. "Yes, father?" "You played well." There was a pause. "A heavy one." Then Adrian spoke, his voice shaking but firm. "Will you send me away too? Like Clara?" Lord Harrington looked at his son for a long moment. His face was hard to read, but something in his eyes had changed. The anger was not there. "Not this time." "No," he said at last. "I will not send you away." Adrian's lips parted in surprise. He hadn't expected that. "I was wrong," Lord Harrington continued. "I thought music would make you weak. But today I saw strength. Real strength." Adrian's eyes filled with tears. He quickly wiped them with his sleeve. The guests began to clap, slowly at first, then louder. It was not just polite applause. It was respect. Adrian sat there, overwhelmed not by the sound of their hands, but by the feeling inside his chest. He had done something that took all his courage. He had stood up not with words, but with music. He had changed something, not just in the hearts of the guests, not just in the silence of the mansion, but in his father. The storm was passing, but one thing remained in his heart like an unfinished song: Clara. She was not there to hear him play, not there to see what he had done, and yet he believed somehow, somewhere she would know. She would be proud. The next morning, the sun rose gently over the Harrington mansion. For the first time in many days, the house felt warm, not just from the light outside, but from something new inside. Adrian sat at the piano again, but this time it wasn't in secret. The door to the drawing room was wide open, and servants passed by, smiling softly as they heard the music. He played the same melody as before, slower this time, with more feeling. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply playing from the heart. Every note spoke of Clara, the lessons, the laughter, the risks, the promise they made. The sound filled the halls like sunlight. Lord Harrington stood at the top of the staircase listening. He didn't interrupt this time. He didn't frown or turn away. Instead, he stood still, hands behind his back, eyes looking down at his son. A memory returned to him, a quiet evening long ago when his late wife had played the same melody, smiling at Adrian as he reached toward the sound. That afternoon, Lord Harrington made a decision. He sent for his assistant and gave a short order. Find the maid named Clara. Wherever she is, bring her back. It took 2 days. Clara had returned to her small village, where she lived with her younger siblings in a tiny house. She was shocked when a letter arrived from the Harrington estate. At first, she was scared to open it. Her hands shook. But as her eyes moved across the words, her fear turned into disbelief. The letter did not speak of punishment. It spoke of gratitude. It asked her to return, not as a maid, but as Adrian's music companion and personal tutor. Clara cried when she finished reading. She could not believe it. After all that had happened, she had thought she would never see Adrian again. But now she had a chance to go back. Not in secret, but with pride. When she arrived at the mansion, Adrian was waiting near the door. The moment he heard the carriage stop, he stood up quickly, hands reaching forward. "Clara," he whispered. She rushed to him, her voice full of emotion. "It's me, Adrian. I'm here." He smiled, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I thought you were gone forever." "I thought so too," she said, holding his hands tightly. "But you brought me back." Lord Harrington stood nearby, watching them. His expression was softer than ever before. "Clara," he said, "I was wrong about many things. You did what I could not. You helped my son see the world." Clara looked down, her voice steady. "I only gave him what he already had inside, music. He just needed someone to help him find it." The Lord nodded. "And I thank you for that." From that day forward, everything changed in the mansion. Clara was no longer treated like a servant. She was given her own room, her own place in the household, and a title, Miss Clara, companion and music mentor to Master Adrian. Adrian continued to play every day. Clara guided him through new songs, more difficult pieces. They laughed again, they learned again. And soon music filled every corner of the house. Guests began to visit not to discuss business, but to hear Adrian perform. People from outside the city came to listen to the blind boy who played like he could see into the soul. They sat quietly as he played, then stood to applaud when he finished. Adrian smiled more now. He spoke with confidence. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was his voice. Even Lord Harrington changed. He began to attend Adrian's small concerts. Sometimes he even asked Clara questions about music, and one quiet evening, as Adrian played in the background, the Lord walked over to the piano and gently placed his hand on his son's shoulder. "Your mother would have been proud," he said softly. Adrian smiled. "I hope so." He didn't say much more. He didn't need to. That one sentence meant the world. Life moved forward. The pain of the past didn't disappear, but it no longer controlled them. Adrian grew into a young man full of talent and courage. Clara became more than a tutor, she became family. And in that once cold mansion, the sound of music became a part of life. Every key played, every note sung was a reminder that even in the darkest places, light could be found. All it took was one brave maid, and a boy who believed in the power of a song.